Tuesday morning began as usual. Meryl Hart woke up 5 minutes before her alarm clock rang, carefully slipping out from under the covers, trying not to wake her husband sleeping next to her. Noah always slept soundly, but she was used to being careful. There was something comforting about knowing every move, every step of her morning ritual in advance. The bathroom greeted her with the coolness of tile under her bare feet. Mary turned on the water, waited for it to reach a comfortable temperature, and stepped into the shower. The water washed away the last traces of sleep, and a plan for the day gradually formed in her head. A meeting at 10, lunch with colleagues, a meeting with new clients, then dinner with Noah. A typical day, one of hundreds she had had. Half an hour later, Meryl was standing in the kitchen of their neat two-story house in Lakeview. The neighborhood was considered prestigious among the middle class. All these identical houses with manicured lawns, family minivans in the driveways, and children's bikes by the garages. Only she and Noah didn't have children. Not yet, she would say to anyone who asked, although in reality they had stopped discussing children a couple of years ago. The coffee maker hissed quietly, filling the kitchen with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Meryl took eggs and vegetables out of the refrigerator to make an omelet. Cooking always calmed her down, allowing her to focus on simple tasks. Up already? Noah's voice caught her off guard. She had almost forgotten that he had a late shift at the service center today. "Good morning," Meryl smiled, noticing that the smile came out almost naturally. "Coffee?" Noah nodded and walked over to the table, gently touching her shoulder on the way. It was a casual gesture, but Meryl felt something tighten inside her. Once, such touches would have made her flush. Now they only made her feel guilty, a feeling she had learned to ignore. Noah was a good man. Too good, Meryl sometimes thought. A technician at a large electronics company, he repaired things that broke in other people's lives. Their own life was also in good working order. They had bought a house with a mortgage 3 years ago. Their cars were in good condition, their bills were paid, and they had a vacation planned for July. The ordinary life of an ordinary suburban couple. "What are your plans for today?" Noah asked, starting on his omelet. "The usual. Meeting, paperwork, meeting with potential clients," Meryl replied, sipping her coffee. "You have a late shift, right?" "Yeah, until 9. Don't wait up for dinner." Meryl nodded, thinking that she wasn't going to wait up for him tonight. But she didn't say that, of course. At 8:30, she was already in her office on the 4th floor of the Midwestern Security Insurance Company building. Operations manager Meryl Hart was responsible for an entire department dealing with private property insurance. Her colleagues considered her demanding but fair, and her clients appreciated her attention to detail. No one saw her as a woman capable of leading a double life, but that was the art of deception. Elliot Wayne was the first to arrive at the office, as usual. Tall and fit, with dark hair pulled back into a casual bun and 3 days stubble, he was the complete opposite of Noah with his neatly trimmed beard and classic shirts. Elliot had only been with the company for 6 months, but he had already established himself as a talented analyst and as an attentive listener. "Good morning, Mrs. Hart," he said, entering her office without knocking. Only he allowed himself such familiarity, and only he could get away with it. "Good morning, Mr. Wayne," she replied, struggling to suppress a smile. They always addressed each other formally in the office. It was part of their unspoken game. "The presentation materials are ready," Elliot said, placing a folder on her desk. "I made all the changes you requested." "Thank you," Meryl said, taking the folder, their fingers touching briefly. "Anything else?" Elliot leaned forward slightly. "Tonight?" 7, she replied quietly, even though there was no one else in the office. "Same as usual." He nodded and left, leaving behind a faint scent of men's cologne. Meryl opened the folder, but the numbers and graphs blurred before her eyes. She thought about the evening, about the lakeside hotel on the outskirts of town where she and Elliot always came separately, about the 2 hours they could spend without masks and roles, just being themselves. Their relationship had begun 3 months ago after a company party. Nothing special. The standard office romance scenario. A few extra glasses of wine. A long conversation about how no one understood them. A chance touch. A glance that lingered longer than it should have. And then they were kissing in her car in an empty parking lot. Banal and predictable. But something about this banality captivated Meryl, giving her a sense of freedom that was so lacking in her perfect life. The meeting went as usual. No surprises or revelations. Meryl presented the quarterly report, discussed the figures with her colleagues, and set priorities for the following week. No one would have guessed that all this time she was thinking about what lingerie to wear that evening and how to explain to Noah why she would be late home from work. During her lunch break, Jenna, the department secretary and perhaps the only person in the company Meryl could call a friend, popped into her office. "Going to lunch?" Jenna asked, adjusting her red curls. "Yes, of course." Meryl closed her laptop and got up from her desk. "The cafe across the street." The cafe was crowded, but they managed to find a table by the window. Jenna talked about her new hobby, yoga, how she had finally managed to do a difficult asana, and about her cute instructor. Meryl listened half-heartedly, nodding in the right places and smiling when necessary. She watched the people at the neighboring tables, young mothers with strollers, businessmen in suits, a couple of students with laptops, ordinary people with ordinary lives. I wonder how many of them are also leading double lives. "And then I thought I could invite you and Noah." Jenna's voice brought her back to reality. "Sorry, what?" Meryl focused her gaze on her friend. "Barbecue this Saturday," Jenna repeated patiently. "At Mark's place. Nothing fancy, just hang out and chat. You and Noah haven't gone out in a while." "Oh, thanks for the invitation." Meryl felt a pang of guilt. When was the last time they had gone out together? "I'll ask Noah, but I think we'll come." "Great," Jenna said happily. "By the way, can you bring your new analyst, Elliot? He doesn't seem to socialize with anyone outside of work." Meryl almost choked on her coffee. "Elliot? Why him?" "I don't know." Jenna shrugged. "I just thought the guy needed to socialize more with his co-workers. He's always so aloof, although I admit he is damn attractive." "I'll pass him the invitation," Meryl said, trying to sound casual. Back in the office, she bumped into Elliot in the hallway. He was carrying a folder of documents, looking focused and businesslike. "Mrs. Hart," he nodded. "I was just looking for you. These forms need to be signed." "Of course. Come into my office," she replied. When the office door closed, Elliot put the folder on the desk and looked at Meryl intently. "Is everything okay? You seem tense." "Jenna invited us to a barbecue on Saturday," Meryl said, sinking into a chair. "Noah and me. You're invited too." Elliot raised an eyebrow. "So what? I can't go." "It's not that." Meryl shook her head. "It's just weird. I think she suspects something." "Come on," Elliot smiled. "We're completely professional at work. No one suspects anything." He was right, of course. They were very careful. No personal conversations in the office, no messages from work computers, no dates in places where they might run into acquaintances. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail. "You're right," Meryl said finally. "I'm just being paranoid." "That's normal," Elliot smiled slightly. "But don't forget to enjoy the game. That's the whole point, right?" She nodded. Yes, that was the point. The adrenaline, the secrecy, the feeling of power over her own life. Meryl really enjoyed this game, even though she never thought she would participate in it. The rest of the day passed as usual. A meeting with clients ran late, and when Meryl finally left the conference room, it was almost 6 o'clock. She quickly went to her office, gathered her things, changed in the restroom, and freshened up her makeup. A message from Noah popped up on her phone. "Will you be late?" Meryl froze for a moment, then replied, "Yes, I'm stuck at work. Client meeting. Don't wait up for dinner." She reread the message to make sure it sounded natural and pressed send. Lying was getting easier and easier for her. Leaving the building, she got into her car and drove not toward home, but in the opposite direction, toward the lakeside hotel. Her heart was beating faster than usual, but not from fear of being exposed, but from anticipation. This little adventure was the only thing that made her feel truly alive. In the hotel lobby, Meryl put on her usual indifferent expression. She already knew that the staff had changed 2 hours ago and that none of the current employees had seen her on her previous visits. Still, she put on dark glasses and a scarf that partially covered her face. Not that anyone would recognize her, Lakeview was a big enough city, but caution had become second nature to her. "The room is under the name Helen Gray," she said to the clerk, handing over her prepaid card. "Another precaution. Never use your real card to pay for a hotel room." After receiving the key, Meryl went up to the third floor. The room was standard: a large bed, a TV, a small sofa by the window, and a bathroom. Nothing special, but Meryl never ceased to be amazed at how such an ordinary place could become the scene of her secret life. She took off her coat, took a bottle of wine and 2 glasses out of her bag. Then she checked her phone. Another message from Noah. "Got it. Love you." Meryl turned off the screen without replying. A pang of guilt stabbed her somewhere deep inside, but she dismissed it as usual. She deserved these moments of freedom. She deserved to feel desired, to see the admiration in a man's eyes, to feel the passion that had long since disappeared from her marriage. A knock at the door made her jump. Meryl went to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Elliot. She opened it, and he came in, immediately wrapping his arms around her waist and kissing her as if they hadn't seen each other in months, not just a few hours ago. "I missed you," he whispered in her ear. Meryl smiled. She knew it was just words, part of the game, but how nice it was to hear them, how nice it was to feel wanted and needed. "Me too," she replied, and at that moment her world narrowed to the size of a hotel room where there was no past, no future, only the present, only the two of them and these hours stolen from life. Meryl woke up before the alarm and lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling. Noah was breathing steadily beside her, his back turned to her. She studied the familiar silhouette of his shoulders, the tousled hair at the nape of his neck, the outline of his back under the blanket. Once, the sight of her sleeping husband had filled her with tenderness. Now she felt more like guilt mixed with a strange irritation. Carefully getting out of bed, Meryl headed for the bathroom. Mechanically performing her morning ritual, she checked her phone. A message from Elliot had arrived late at night. "Can't stop thinking about you. Tomorrow?" Meryl deleted the message immediately after reading it. Another habit she had developed over the past 3 months. She always deleted her message history, used an app that automatically deleted conversations, and never saved Elliot's contact under his real name. In her phone, he was listed as Ella K., supposedly a colleague from another department. Each of their meetings was carefully planned. Meryl made a mental list of things to do. Come up with a plausible excuse for coming home late, book a room with a prepaid card she kept specifically for this purpose, make sure her clothes didn't smell like his cologne. These precautions became a kind of ritual, part of a game that was almost as enjoyable as the meetings themselves. After her shower, Meryl went down to the kitchen and started making breakfast. 15 minutes later, Noah appeared, sleepy and disheveled. "Good morning," he said, kissing her on the cheek. "You're up early." "Lots of work," Meryl replied, placing a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. "I want to get in early and finish my reports before the meeting." Noah nodded, his eyes fixed on the newspaper he was reading on his tablet. Meryl stole a glance at his face, familiar down to the last wrinkle, calm and focused. The man she had lived with for 7 years. The man she thought she knew better than herself. "You have the day off today, right?" she asked, pouring coffee into cups. "Yes." Noah looked up from his tablet. "I think I'll finally do some wiring in the garage, and I wanted to go see my mother and help her with her computer." "Say hi to her for me," Meryl replied automatically. Her mother-in-law lived 20 minutes away in the same city, but they didn't see each other often, probably no more than once a month. Breakfast passed in the usual silence. They used to talk for hours, even over meals, discussing movies, books, sharing plans and dreams. Now, however, each was lost in their own thoughts, and Meryl was quite happy with that. Less conversation meant less chance of giving herself away with a careless phrase or glance. "I'm leaving," she said, finishing her coffee and picking up her bag. "See you tonight." "Have a good day," Noah replied, without looking up from his tablet. Meryl left the house and got into her car. Instead of starting the engine right away, she took out her phone and texted Elliot. 7 tonight. Same number. The office was quiet. Most of the employees didn't show up until 9, and it was only 7:30. Meryl loved these morning hours when she could work in peace without being distracted by questions from her colleagues. She turned on her computer, opened the folder with the reports, and immersed herself in her work. Around 9, there was a knock on the door and Jenna entered with a cup of coffee in her hand. "Good morning, workaholic," she smiled. "You know no one appreciates your enthusiasm, right?" "I just like working in silence," Meryl replied, leaning back in her chair. "What do we have today?" "Johnson moved the meeting to tomorrow. The Martins confirmed their visit at 2, and Frank asked me to let you know that the materials on the Gordon case are ready," Jenna reported. "By the way, are you coming on Saturday? I've already started making a shopping list." "Noah and I are," Meryl nodded. "I'm not sure about Elliot, we haven't discussed it." "Oh, speaking of him," Jenna lowered her voice, even though there was no one else in the office. "Did you notice that he's wearing the same clothes today as yesterday?" Meryl froze. "What?" "No, I didn't notice." "I'm telling you," Jenna continued enthusiastically. "Same shirt, just a different tie. I think Mr. Perfect spent the night out." "So what?" Meryl shrugged indifferently. "He's a grown man, he can spend his nights wherever he wants." "Of course," Jenna agreed. "I'm just curious who with. He doesn't seem like the type to have casual relationships. Maybe he's in a serious relationship." "I don't keep tabs on my employees' personal lives," Meryl replied dryly, returning to her papers. "And I don't recommend you do either." Jenna raised her eyebrows in surprise. Okay, don't be angry. I'm just talking. I'll go get ready for the meeting." When the secretary closed the door behind her, Meryl was finally able to breathe. Was Elliot really that careless? Or was it just a coincidence and Jenna was mistaken? Either way, she needed to warn him to pay more attention to such details in the future. The day dragged on agonizingly slowly. Meetings, paperwork, client appointments. Meryl did it all on autopilot, glancing at her watch every few minutes. Elliot was perfectly professional, except once, when he handed her a folder and held her hand a second longer than necessary. This tiny gesture sent a warm sensation through her stomach, reminding her of the evening ahead. At 6:30, having finished her workday, Meryl sent Noah a message. "I'm running late at work. Lots of paperwork. I'll be home late. Don't wait up for dinner." He replied almost immediately. "Got it. I'll eat dinner myself. Want me to get anything for breakfast?" This simple, everyday question made Meryl's conscience prick. She imagined Noah eating dinner alone in their kitchen, perhaps with the TV on in the background, thinking about the breakfast they would share together tomorrow. Anyone else might have hesitated, but she had long since learned to silence the voice of her conscience. "It would be great if you could pick up some croissants from the bakery near your place," she replied, knowing that Noah would agree, as he almost always did to her requests, big and small. Meryl arrived at the Lakeside Hotel at 7:15. Elliot was already waiting in the room with a bottle of wine and pizza ordered from a nearby restaurant. He smiled when he saw her, and Meryl thought once again how unlike Noah he was. Not just in appearance, although the contrast was striking. Elliot's dark hair versus Noah's blonde, his athletic build and casual elegance versus her husband's stocky reliability. It was his energy, his approach to life. Noah was stable and predictable. Elliot was spontaneous and intense. With her husband, Meryl felt protected. With her lover, she felt alive. "I ordered your favorite," Elliot said, pointing to the pizza, "with artichokes and mushrooms." "Thanks," Meryl said, taking off her coat and shoes, feeling the tension of the workday leave her. Today was a crazy day. "Tell me about it." Elliot poured wine into glasses and sat down next to her on the bed. This is how almost all of their meetings began, with wine, dinner, and conversation. Meryl talked about work, clients, sometimes Noah, although she tried not to mention his name. Elliot shared stories from his past life in Seattle, where he had moved from 6 months ago, talked about the music he loved and the books he was reading. Strangely, these conversations were just as valuable to Meryl as the physical intimacy that usually followed. "Jenna noticed today that you're wearing the same shirt you wore yesterday," Meryl said, sipping her wine. "You should be more careful." Elliot shrugged. "I just didn't have time to stop by my place after the gym. I don't think it means anything." "Maybe," Meryl shook her head, "but it's better to be safe than sorry." Jenna loves to gossip. "They all do," Elliot smiled. "The office is like a small town. Everyone knows everything about everyone else, or thinks they do." "And what do you think they know about us?" Meryl asked, suddenly feeling uneasy. "Nothing," Elliot replied confidently. "We behave impeccably. You're the strict boss. I'm the diligent employee. We meet at a motel outside of town, pay cash and arrive and leave at different times. No one will suspect a thing." He leaned down and kissed her, and Meryl let her worries melt away as she felt his lips on hers, his hands on her body. This was what she needed. This intensity, this passion, this moment when nothing else existed but the two of them. Later, lying next to Elliot in the dimly lit room, Meryl thought about her marriage. When exactly had everything changed? When had passion turned into routine, and an exciting journey together turned into staying in one place? Maybe it was the absence of children which she had never dared to have, fearing that motherhood would rob her of her freedom forever. Or was it that her career had gradually taken over her life, while Noah was content with his modest job as a technician? Or was it simply that people change over time and their paths imperceptibly diverge, even if they continue to live under the same roof? "What are you thinking about?" Elliot asked, running his finger along her shoulder. "About how I ended up living this life," Meryl smiled. "A model wife, a respected employee, and here I am with you. Do you regret it?" His voice sounded light, but Meryl detected a hint of tension. "No," she replied after a pause. "Strange, but no. I feel guilty, of course, but not regret." "Is he a good man, your husband?" Elliot asked. "Yes," Meryl sighed. "Very good. Kind, caring, reliable. A typical good guy, you know? The kind of man people say they're lucky to have married." "Then why?" "Because good doesn't always mean the one you need," Meryl replied, surprised at her own candor. "With him, it's peaceful, too peaceful. It's as if life is already over and we're just waiting to grow old in our cozy house with a white picket fence." Elliot paused, then said, "You could leave him. Get a divorce." Meryl shook her head. "Why? I have everything I need, a stable marriage, a good job, and this." She gestured to the number, implying their relationship. "Divorce would mean scandal, dividing property, having to explain everything to everyone. Too much trouble." "What if he finds out?" "He won't," Meryl said confidently. "Noah isn't the type to snoop or check up on me. He trusts me." "That's not an answer," Elliot pointed out. "What if he finds out?" Meryl thought about it. She had never seriously considered that possibility. Exposure seemed too unlikely given all the precautions they had taken. "I think he'd be devastated," she said finally. "Noah is very traditional in that regard. Loyalty means a lot to him." "And to you? To me?" Meryl smiled. "I'm loyal to myself, to my desires, to my need to feel alive. Isn't that more important?" Elliot didn't answer, just pulled her closer to him. They spent another hour together. Then Meryl began to get ready to leave. As usual, she left first, another precaution. "See you tomorrow at the office, Mr. Wayne," she said, kissing him goodbye. "I'll be waiting, Mrs. Hart," he replied with a smile. The drive home took about half an hour. Meryl turned on the radio, singing along to familiar songs and feeling surprisingly peaceful. These stolen evenings gave her strength and allowed her to return to the monotony of everyday life with a smile. As she pulled up to the house, she noticed that only the living room light was on, which meant that Noah was still awake. Meryl took a special clothing spray from the glove compartment, which she used after her meetings with Elliot. Then she checked her hair and makeup in the rearview mirror. Everything was fine. Just a tired woman coming home from work, nothing more. Entering the house, she found Noah in the living room with his laptop on his knees. "Hi," Meryl said, taking off her coat. "Not asleep yet?" "I decided to wait for you," he replied, closing his laptop. "How was work?" "Exhausting," she sighed. "This new client, the Martins, are very demanding. I had to redo the documents 3 times." Noah nodded, and Meryl caught herself thinking that he was taking her lie too easily. It was as if he didn't even consider the possibility of deception. "Would you like some tea?" he asked, getting up from the sofa. "That would be great," Meryl replied, sinking into an armchair. "How's your mom?" "She's fine," Noah said, heading for the kitchen. "She complained about her arthritis, but she's in good spirits overall. She asked about you." "I should visit her this weekend," Meryl said, knowing she probably wouldn't. Her weekends were usually filled with work or chores. Noah returned with 2 cups of tea and sat down across from her. "By the way, I was looking through our old photos today," he said. "I found the album from our trip to Yellowstone, remember?" "Of course," Meryl smiled. That trip was one of the happiest memories of their marriage. 3 weeks on the road, just the two of them, the beauty of the national parks, and the feeling of boundless freedom. "We were so young then." "It was only 5 years ago," Noah gently objected. "Not that long ago." "It seems like an eternity," Meryl sighed, immediately regretting her words. Noah looked at her intently, and for a moment Meryl thought he could see right through her, all her secrets and lies. "Yes, a lot has changed," he said finally. "We've both changed." "That's natural," Meryl replied hastily. "People change." "That's true." Noah nodded and took a sip of tea. "You know, I've been thinking maybe we should repeat that trip or go somewhere else. We haven't gone anywhere together in a long time." The suggestion took Meryl by surprise. Indeed, for several years now, they had limited themselves to short weekend getaways, nothing more. The thought of spending 2 or 3 weeks alone with Noah made her feel strange, a mixture of nostalgia for the time when they had truly enjoyed each other's company and anxiety at the prospect of losing her secret meetings with Elliot. "We can think about it," she replied cautiously. "Although now isn't the best time. Lots of work, important clients." "Of course," Noah agreed easily. "Just an idea. Think about it." He smiled again, and something in his smile, a hint of sadness, understanding, made Meryl feel uncomfortable. She finished her tea and stood up. "I think I'll take a shower and go to bed. I'm exhausted." "Sure," Noah nodded. "I'll stay up a little longer." When she got to the bathroom, Meryl stood under the hot shower for a long time, as if trying to wash away not only the traces of the past day, but also the vague feeling of anxiety that had appeared after her conversation with her husband. Something had changed in Noah, or was it just her imagination? She had never considered him particularly perceptive or attentive to detail. Noah was always immersed in his thoughts, his projects. Repairing old appliances was his passion, to which he could devote hours. But today his gaze was different, more conscious, more knowing? Nonsense, Meryl told herself as she turned off the water. You're being paranoid. He just suggested going on vacation. There's nothing strange about that. When she came out of the bathroom, it was already dark in the bedroom. Noah was asleep, turned toward the wall. Meryl lay down carefully next to him, trying not to wake him. A few minutes later, she was asleep, dreaming of a road, an endless road, which she was driving along alone, with no destination or direction. The barbecue at Jenna's turned out to be unexpectedly tense. Meryl stood in the corner of the terrace, watching Noah chat casually with Jenna's husband about the latest baseball games. She took a sip of wine, trying to calm her growing anxiety. Contrary to her expectations, Elliot had come to the party after all and was now talking to some blonde from the marketing department, occasionally glancing at Meryl. Your new analyst is very charming, Jenna remarked, nodding toward Elliot. Rebecca hasn't left his side for an hour. He's a professional, Meryl replied dryly, fighting an inappropriate pang of jealousy. Come on, Jenna smiled. No one's denying his professionalism, but you have to admit he's hot. That hair, that stubble. She sighed dreamily. If I weren't married— You're drunk, Meryl interrupted, even though she knew her friend had only had one glass of wine. A little, Jenna agreed. But I can still see the way he looks at you. Marielle almost choked on her wine. What are you talking about? Oh my God, you don't even notice. Jenna rolled her eyes. He's always looking at you. He watches where you are in the room. It's so obvious. You're imagining things. Meryl tried to sound dismissive, but her voice betrayed her. He's my subordinate, and we have a strictly professional relationship. Sure, Jenna winked. I'm just kidding. By the way, have you seen my husband? I think he promised to help with the grill. When Jenna walked away, Meryl took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Were she and Elliot really that obvious? Or was Jenna just joking with no basis for her comment? Either way, she needed to be more careful, much more careful. She glanced over at Noah, who was now talking to Jenna's husband, Mark, helping him with the grill. Seeing her husband in the company of other people had always been a strange experience for Meryl, like watching a familiar actor in an unfamiliar play. Noah was charmingly awkward in large groups, but always sincere and attentive to those around him. People were drawn to him and trusted him with their secrets. He's such a reliable guy, your Noah, her friends would say. You're lucky to have him. Lucky? Meryl wasn't so sure anymore. Their marriage had long since turned into a comfortable routine, devoid of any surprises. They lived like roommates, sharing a roof, food, and sometimes a bed. Elliot had given her back a sense of life, passion, and risk. With him, she felt like a desirable woman, not just part of a well-oiled machine called family life. What are you thinking about? Noah's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. He had come up behind her unnoticed, holding a plate of grilled meat. Nothing, just thinking, Meryl smiled tensely. Just a little tired. It's been a tough week. I understand, Noah nodded. Do you want to leave early? No, it's fine, she replied hastily, feeling a pang of guilt at her insincerity. Jenna will be upset if we leave before dessert. Noah smiled and touched her hand lightly. As you wish. By the way, I spoke with your new analyst, Elliot. He's an interesting guy. Meryl struggled to keep a neutral expression on her face. Really? What did you talk about? Just this and that, Noah shrugged. Work, Seattle, where he moved from. Music. It turns out we have similar tastes. Yes, he's Competent, Meryl squeezed out. And he thinks very highly of his boss, Noah added, looking intently at his wife. He said you're the best boss he's ever had. Meryl felt the blood rush to her face. Really? That's nice to hear. He seems very observant, Noah continued, the kind of person who notices details that others miss. Meryl thought she detected a strange note in his voice and looked at her husband more closely. His face remained calm, but there was a flash in his eyes that she couldn't quite read. Knowledge? Suspicion? Or was she just imagining things? I think we should go home, Meryl said suddenly. I'm starting to get a headache. Of course, Noah agreed immediately, and for some reason his instant agreement alarmed her even more. I'll tell Jenna we're leaving. They hardly spoke on the way home. Meryl stared out the window at the houses and trees rushing by, feeling a strange heaviness in her heart. Something had changed in their relationship and she couldn't figure out what it was. Or maybe it was just her, and Noah was the same as always. Are you okay? He asked, keeping his eyes on the road. You seem kind of tense today. Just tired, Meryl replied automatically. Work is crazy. End of the quarter is coming up. Noah nodded, accepting her explanation, but Meryl noticed how his fingers tightened on the steering wheel. Before, he wouldn't have noticed her state or would have chalked it up to female moodiness. Now he had become more attentive. What did that mean? When she got home, she went straight to her bedroom claiming she had a headache. After taking a shower and changing into her pajamas, Meryl lay down in bed and took out her phone. A message from Elliot had arrived while they were on the road. Your husband was asking me about Seattle. I think he suspects something. Meryl felt a chill run down her spine. Could Noah really know something? But how? She had been extremely careful, thinking through every step, every alibi. What could have given her away? You're being paranoid, she replied. He was just being polite. See you Tuesday. Same time, same place. Meryl deleted the messages, turned off her phone, and placed it on the nightstand. A few minutes later, Noah entered the bedroom. Are you feeling better? He asked, taking off his shirt. A little, Meryl replied, watching him change into his pajama pants. Noah lay down next to her, but didn't immediately turn off the light and turn toward the wall as he usually did. Instead, he picked up the book from the bedside table and began to read. New book? Meryl asked, trying to break the strange tension that hung in the air. Yes, Noah nodded, showing her the cover. The Art of Deception, the Psychology of Lying and Self-Deception. Meryl felt her heart skip a beat. Interesting. Topic. Very, Noah agreed without looking up from the page. Especially the section on micro-expressions and non-verbal cues. It turns out that even the most skilled liars give themselves away through their body language. I see, Meryl said, trying to sound indifferent. Why are you interested in that? Noah shrugged. Professional interest. In the repair business, you often have to determine whether a customer is telling the truth about how an appliance broke. Many people don't want to admit that they did something wrong. I see. Meryl turned away, hoping the conversation would end there. And there's an interesting chapter about double lives, Noah added casually. About how people create entire alternative realities and believe they can move between them endlessly without consequences. Meryl froze, afraid to move. Her heart was beating so loudly that she thought Noah must be able to hear it. Sounds fascinating, she finally managed to say. Very. Noah closed the book and turned off the light. Good night, Meryl. Good night, she whispered, feeling panic rising inside her like an icy wave. When Meryl woke up in the morning, Noah was already out of bed. She found him in the kitchen making breakfast. Good morning, he said, setting a cup of coffee in front of her. How's your head? Better, thanks, Meryl replied, surprised by his concern. You're up early. I have a shift at 8, Noah explained. By the way, I might be late today. We got some new equipment and I need to get trained. Sure, Merrill nodded, feeling a sudden sense of relief. If Noah was busy until evening, she could meet Elliot without having to come up with a complicated alibi. I can stay late at work too. Noah smiled. So we'll have dinner separately. Something in his tone made Merrill wary, but she dismissed her concerns. You're being paranoid, she told herself. He's just stating a fact. The day at work passed with the usual concerns. Merrill tried to stay away from Elliot, especially when Jenna was around, whose jokes about the hot analyst now caused her not irritation but real anxiety. What if Jenna wasn't just joking? What if she had really noticed something? At 6:30, having finished with her paperwork, Merrill texted Elliot, "Meet me at 7. Book a room yourself, not at the lakeside." She decided that using the same hotel was too risky, especially if Noah really did suspect something. Elliot replied a minute later, "Pineview Motel on the east side, room 12, I'll be waiting." Merrill deleted the messages and left the office, trying not to look too hurried. In the parking lot, she noticed that she had a flat tire. "Damn," she muttered, examining the damage. She didn't have a spare tire. She had been meaning to replace the broken one for a long time, but never found the time. Picking up her phone, Merrill wondered for a moment whether to call Noah. He would definitely help her change the tire, but then she would have to cancel her meeting with Elliot or come up with a new excuse for coming home late. Besides, Noah had said he would be busy at work. Deciding not to take any chances, she called a taxi. While waiting for the car, she sent Noah a message. "I have a flat tire. I called roadside assistance, but it'll take a while. Don't wait for dinner." The reply came almost instantly. "Do you want me to come over? I can help." "No, don't," Merrill typed quickly. "I already arranged for a mechanic. Besides, you have training today." "Right," Noah replied after a short pause. "Be careful. Let me know when you get it sorted out." Merrill sighed with relief when the taxi finally arrived. The car problem was unexpected, but on the other hand, it gave her a great alibi. Now she had a valid reason to stay late and get home late. The Pineview Motel was a rather old building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by pine and fir trees. Not the most romantic place, Merrill thought as she paid the taxi driver, but it would do for their purposes. Elliot was already waiting for her in the room with a bottle of wine and Chinese takeout. "You're late," he said, kissing her. "I was starting to worry." "I had a flat tire," Merrill explained, taking off her coat. "I had to call a taxi." "That's unfortunate," Elliot nodded. "But on the other hand, it's a great alibi." "That's exactly what I thought," Merrill smiled, taking a glass of wine from him. "Although Noah offered to come and help, can you believe it?" "Not surprising," Elliot shrugged. "He seems like a caring husband." "Yes, he is." Merrill felt a familiar pang of guilt. "Too caring." "And that's a bad thing?" Elliot raised an eyebrow. "No, of course not," Merrill sighed. "It's just, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve to be treated that way." "Because you're cheating on him?" Elliot asked bluntly. "Yes," she admitted after a pause. "And because I don't feel the way a wife should feel about him anymore. Affection, gratitude, yes, but not love, not passion." Elliot sat down next to her on the edge of the bed. "Have you ever thought about just leaving him? Getting a divorce?" Merrill shook her head. "Why complicate things? Right now, I have everything I need. A stable marriage, a good job, and our meetings." She touched his hand. "I'm not ready to ruin all that. Even if Noah finds out?" "He won't find out," Merrill said confidently. "I'm too careful." Elliot looked at her doubtfully. "You weren't so sure yesterday. After Jenna's party, you seemed worried." "Just a moment of paranoia," Merrill dismissed. "Noah isn't the type to follow or check up on me." In that respect, he was convenient. They spent 2 hours together as usual, alternating between conversation, wine, and intimacy. When it was time to leave, Meryl called a taxi to the parking lot near her office where she had left her car. "What are you going to tell your husband about the car?" Elliot asked, helping her into her coat. "The truth, partially," Meryl replied, "that I called roadside assistance. They replaced the tire and I was able to leave. Nothing complicated." "What if he checks? Call roadside assistance or look at the tire?" Meryl laughed. "You watch too many detective shows. Noah won't check anything. He trusts me." "That's what worries me," Elliot said seriously. "People who trust completely are often the most observant. They notice details precisely because they're not looking for them." "Philosopher," Meryl teased, nudging him. "Don't worry. Everything's under control." But on the way home, Elliot's words kept running through her head. What if Noah really did suspect something? His strange looks lately, the unexpected questions, the book on the psychology of lying. No, she was just getting herself worked up. Noah had always been an open book. He couldn't hide his feelings. If he suspected something, she would have noticed right away. When she got home, Meryl found that Noah hadn't returned yet. It was unusual for him to be out so late. Even when he worked overtime, he usually came home by 10. Now it was almost 11. She sent him a message. "I'm home. Where are you?" There was no reply for about 5 minutes. Then her phone rang. "Still at training. I'll be home soon." Meryl frowned. What kind of training could last this late? But then again, what did it matter to her? It was even better this way. She had time to take a shower and wash away all traces of this evening. In the bathroom, she automatically checked the pockets of her coat before throwing it in the laundry basket and felt something in the right pocket. Pulling it out, Meryl was surprised to find a small cylindrical object that looked like a miniature voice recorder or tracker. Her heart began to race. What was it? How did it get in her pocket? Who could have planted it there? Could it be Noah? With trembling hands, she examined the device but couldn't figure out what it was or whether it worked. Her first impulse was to throw it away, but then Meryl changed her mind. If it really was a tracker or a listening device and Noah had installed it, then the disappearance of the object would only confirm his suspicions. She had to be more cunning. She put the device back in her coat pocket and decided to accidentally wash it with her coat tomorrow, pretending she had forgotten to take it out. If it was a listening device or a tracker, the water would disable it. After taking a shower and changing into her pajamas, Meryl went to bed, but she couldn't sleep. Disturbing thoughts swirled in her head. What if Noah wasn't at training? What if he had been following her today? Had he seen her take a taxi to the motel? Did he know about Elliot? "Stop it," she told herself. "You're going crazy with paranoia. Noah isn't capable of such complicated games." But something told her she was underestimating her husband. She always had. She thought he was simple, predictable, incapable of deceit. What if he had been playing a role all this time, just like she had? At midnight, Meryl heard the front door open. Noah's footsteps were quiet, as if he was trying not to wake her. She pretended to be asleep when he entered the bedroom. Through half-closed eyelids, she watched her husband slowly change his clothes, neatly folding them and placing them on a chair. His movements were calm and methodical, his face impenetrable. He was the Noah she had seen thousands of times before. And yet something had changed, something imperceptible in his posture, in the expression in his eyes when he glanced at his supposedly sleeping wife. Noah took out his phone and typed something, a message or a note Meryl couldn't see. Then he quietly placed the phone on the nightstand, turned off the light and lay down next to her, keeping his distance. Meryl lay motionless, feeling the blood pulsing in her temples. The thought that Noah was playing his own game, watching her, gathering evidence, was unbearable. But even more frightening was the thought that all this time she had considered herself in control, when in fact she was a pawn in someone else's game. No, she told herself. It's all in your imagination. Noah is just Noah, the same old reliable, slightly boring Noah. But sleep still wouldn't come, and Meryl lay there for a long time, listening to her husband's steady breathing, wondering if he was really asleep or just pretending, like she was. For the next 2 weeks, Meryl lived on edge. She checked and double-checked her every move, constantly watched her phone, and deleted messages as soon as she read them. She cut her meetings with Elliot down to once a week and changed the location each time. Different motels, different taxis, different alibis. What had once been an exciting game had turned into an exhausting routine. She washed the strange device in her coat pocket along with the rest of her clothes as she had planned, but she couldn't shake her unease. What if it was just one of the ways he was spying on her? What if Noah knew more than he was letting on? At the office, she had to keep her distance from Elliot, especially after Jenna made a few more joking remarks about how he was looking at her. Elliot was unhappy about this estrangement, but Meryl insisted. The risk was too great. At home, she tried to be the perfect wife, cooking dinner, taking an interest in Noah's work, even suggesting they take a weekend trip out of town together. Noah accepted her attention gratefully, but Meryl noticed something new in his eyes, an attentiveness, as if he were watching her from the sidelines, studying her every move. Or was she just imagining things? On Thursday, Noah announced that he was going to a 2-day seminar on servicing new equipment in a neighboring town. "I'll be back Saturday evening," he said, packing a small bag. "Won't you miss me?" "Of course I will," Meryl replied automatically, thinking that this was a great opportunity to meet Elliot without having to come up with complicated excuses. Noah looked at her for a long time, then kissed her lightly on the cheek. "I'll call you when I get there." After he left, Meryl immediately contacted Elliot and suggested they meet at her place. It was risky, but the thought of making love in her own marital bed suddenly seemed exciting and thrilling. It was the final step in her secret rebellion against her boring, predictable marriage. Elliot didn't agree right away. "Are you sure? What if he suddenly comes back?" "He won't," Meryl replied confidently. "The seminar is 200 kilometers away and he's staying there overnight. He called half an hour ago and said he was already there." "If you say so." They agreed to meet at 8. Meryl prepared dinner, opened a bottle of good wine from Noah's stash, and even arranged candles. It felt like a romantic date rather than a secret rendezvous with a lover, and Meryl found herself feeling truly excited for the first time in many years. Elliot arrived on time with a bouquet of flowers and another bottle of wine. They had dinner, chatting about work, then moved into the living room with their glasses. Meryl sat next to Elliot on the sofa, feeling the pleasant warmth of the wine and the closeness of the man she desired. "It's strange to be here," Elliot said, looking around the living room, "in the house where you live with your husband." "Why?" Meryl leaned slightly closer to him. "It's just a place. The house itself doesn't mean anything." "To you, maybe." Elliot took a sip of wine. "But I'm thinking about the man who chose this furniture with you, who arranged these photographs, who considers this place his refuge." Meryl frowned. "Let's not talk about Noah today." "As you wish." Elliot put down his glass and pulled her closer. "What do you suggest we discuss instead?" Meryl responded with a long, deep kiss. Elliot's hand slid under her blouse, caressing her skin, and she felt the familiar arousal, but it was more intense, more forbidden here, in her own home. They were so caught up in each other that they didn't immediately hear the sound of the key turning in the lock. When the front door opened, Meryl jumped away from Elliot, not believing her ears. "Meryl?" Noah's voice sounded calm, as if he hadn't expected to find anything else. She jumped up from the sofa, feverishly adjusting her clothes and hair. "Noah, you were supposed to be at a seminar." Noah slowly entered the living room, his gaze shifting from Meryl to Elliot, who also got up from the sofa but looked more embarrassed than frightened. "The seminar was canceled," Noah said evenly. Equipment malfunction. I tried to call you, but you didn't answer. Meryl turned to the coffee table where her phone lay. The screen showed 3 missed calls. I, we, she faltered, not knowing what to say. For the first time in her life, she didn't have a ready explanation, a ready lie. Mr. Wayne, Noah said to Elliot, still in the same calm tone. I think you should leave. Elliot nodded, picked up his jacket and said, Of course, I'm sorry. Don't bother, Noah replied dryly. You're not the first, and I'm sure you won't be the last. Meryl shuddered at his words. What did he mean? Did he know about the others? When the door closed behind Elliot, a heavy silence fell over the house. Meryl stood with her arms crossed over her chest, not knowing what to say. Noah walked past her into the kitchen, took a glass from the cupboard, and poured himself some water. You're not going to yell? Meryl couldn't help asking. Break dishes? Demand an explanation? Noah slowly drank his water, looking at her over the rim of the glass. Why? What would that change? His calmness frightened her more than any outburst of anger. Meryl felt her own irritation growing. Aren't you angry at all? I cheated on you, Noah, for months, with a young colleague, in our own home. I know, he replied simply. I've known for a long time. Meryl froze. What? How? Noah put down his glass and rubbed his eyes wearily. Do you think I'm a complete idiot? You started coming home late, smelling of a different perfume you'd never worn before. You were constantly checking your phone, deleting messages. You started dressing differently. And most importantly, you stopped looking me in the eyes. I noticed every little thing, Meryl. Every single thing. And you didn't say anything? Meryl felt the ground slipping away from under her feet. You just watched silently as how you were cheating on me. Noah smiled bitterly. Yes, I watched, and I gathered evidence. He left the kitchen, and Meryl heard him go upstairs. A minute later, Noah returned with a folder in his hands. Here, he said, placing the folder on the table in front of her. All your meetings, dates, locations, receipts from motels you booked with your secret card, screenshots of messages you didn't delete as carefully as you thought, photos. Meryl opened the folder and froze. It was all there. A chronology of her meetings with Elliot, photos of their cars in motel parking lots, even printouts of their correspondence. Attached to the files were divorce papers, already filled out with only her signature missing. Have you been following me? Spying on me? Her voice trembled with a mixture of shock and anger. Not right away. Noah sat down across from her. At first, I just noticed inconsistencies in your stories, discrepancies in your work delays. Then I started checking your movements through the phone tracking app. The one we installed on each other 3 years ago after that neighborhood robbery, remember? You must have forgotten about it. Then, yes, I started following you. I hired a private investigator. A private investigator? Meryl felt like she was in some kind of bad dream. Did you really not trust me that much? I trusted you more than anyone else, Noah said quietly. That's why it was so hard for me to believe the obvious. I hoped there was some other explanation, that I was wrong. And instead of just asking me, you hired someone to follow me. Meryl slammed the folder shut, unable to look at the evidence of her betrayal any longer. Would you have admitted it? Noah looked her straight in the eye. If I had asked, would you have told me the truth? Meryl opened her mouth to argue, but couldn't. Of course, she would have lied. She would have come up with another explanation, another alibi. She had been doing it for months and was sure she was good at it. What now? She finally asked. Do you want a divorce? I've prepared all the papers. Noah nodded. My only condition is a quick and amicable divorce. I won't make this public. I won't demand compensation or revenge. Just sign, and we'll part ways civilly. There was no anger or bitterness in his voice, only fatigue and a strange calmness of a man who had made a difficult but necessary decision. I... Meryl didn't know what to say. It had all happened too fast, too unexpectedly. I need time to think. Of course, Noah stood up. I'll sleep in the guest room. Look through the documents, and if you have any questions, we'll discuss them tomorrow. He headed for the kitchen door but turned back. You know what the saddest thing is? I still love you, Meryl, despite everything you've done, despite how long and thoroughly you've deceived me. But I can't be with someone I can't trust anymore. With that, he left, leaving Meryl alone in the kitchen with the folder containing proof of her infidelity. She sat there for several hours, rereading the documents, looking at the photos, realizing the extent of her betrayal through the lens of the evidence Noah had gathered. He was much more attentive and intelligent than she had thought, and much more patient. At one point, Meryl found a handwritten note from Noah in the folder. You're very good at hiding. I'm better at waiting, the short note read. Those simple words struck her more than anything else. There was no malice or petty vindictiveness in them, just a statement of fact. Noah really was better, not in cunning or deviousness, but in steadfastness, patience, and the ability to wait for the moment of truth without letting his emotions get the better of him. In the morning, Meryl went down to the kitchen where Noah was already making breakfast. Strangely, the morning ritual hadn't changed. Coffee, toast, eggs. It was as if nothing had happened. I've thought it over, Meryl said, sitting down at the table. I'll sign the papers. You're right. We should split up. Noah nodded, showing neither relief nor regret. Okay. I've already contacted a lawyer. He'll take care of everything. With our agreement, the process won't take long. What about the house, the cars, everything else? Meryl asked. Everything is specified in the documents, Noah said, placing her plate of breakfast in front of her. We'll sell the house and split the money evenly. The cars will stay with their current owners. We'll close our joint accounts and divide them. It's simple and fair. Meryl looked at him in surprise. Noah had always been practical, but now his businesslike approach to the destruction of their 7-year marriage seemed almost inhuman. Where was the pain? Where was the hurt? Where were all the emotions that should accompany such betrayal? Why are you so calm? She couldn't help asking. Why aren't you yelling at me, accusing me? Noah sat down across from her with his own cup of coffee. What difference would that make, Meryl? Bring back our old life? Make you feel what you no longer feel? I spent months in anger, denial, pain, and bargaining with myself. Now I just want to move on. I didn't want to hurt you, Meryl said, feeling that the words sounded false even to herself. No? Noah raised an eyebrow. What did you want, Meryl? A thrill? Confirmation that you're still attractive? Or just entertainment to relieve your boredom? Bitterness slipped into his voice for the first time, and Meryl realized that beneath his calm exterior lay a deep wound. I don't know, she replied honestly. Maybe a little bit of everything. Our life has become so predictable, so mundane. I felt like I was turning into a shadow of myself. And you decided that lying and cheating was the best way to feel alive? Noah shook his head. You know what's ironic? I noticed your dissatisfaction, your boredom, and I was planning a surprise for our anniversary, a trip to Italy, which you've always dreamed of. The tickets are in the folder with the divorce papers. Meryl felt a lump rise in her throat. She never thought Noah was capable of such a gesture. She always considered him too down to earth, too predictable for romantic surprises. She didn't know what to say. I'm sorry. I forgive you, Noah said simply, not out of generosity or holiness. I just don't want to carry this burden with me into my new life. You made your choice. I made mine. Now we'll both live with the consequences. He finished his coffee and stood up. I've packed the essentials. I'm moving in with Mark for a while until I find an apartment. I'll pick up the rest tonight. I'll leave the keys on the table. Meryl watched him leave and for the first time in a long time saw him for who he really was. Not just her husband, part of the furniture, but a man with depth, complexity, dignity. A man she didn't really know despite 7 years of marriage. "Noah," she called after him as he reached the door. "I'm sorry. I really am. Not for what you found out, but for what I did." He turned around, and for a moment there was such pain in his eyes that Meryl could physically feel it. "I know," he said quietly. "Goodbye, Meryl." The door closed behind him, and Meryl was left alone in a house that no longer felt like home. Only now, having lost everything, did she begin to understand what she had destroyed with her own hands. 3 months passed. Meryl sat in the new apartment she had rented after selling the house and watched the rain outside the window. The small one-room apartment in the city center felt foreign to her, even though she had been living there for almost a month. The sterile surroundings, minimalist furniture, and lack of photographs on the walls, nothing reminded her of her past life, and that was exactly what she wanted. A new beginning, a clean slate. Only starting something new turned out to be more difficult than she had imagined. The divorce went quickly and without complications, just as Noah had promised. They met only in the presence of lawyers, discussing practical matters and avoiding any emotional topics. Noah was polite, correct, and completely impenetrable. Not once did Meryl see what she was looking for in his eyes: regret, pain, longing for what they had lost. He just looked like a man dealing with an unpleasant but necessary task. At work, everything changed almost immediately after their breakup. Of course, no one knew the real reasons for their divorce. Noah kept his word and didn't air their dirty laundry in public. But the gossip still spread, especially when Elliot suddenly handed in his resignation and left the company 2 weeks after that evening. Jenna, as usual, knew more than anyone else. "I heard that Noah caught you with Elliot," she said one day during their first lunch break together in a long time. "Is that true?" Meryl didn't deny it. What was the point? In a small town, secrets don't stay secret for long. "Yes," she replied simply. "So it was." Jenna didn't look shocked. "I suspected there was something going on between you two. He was looking at you too obviously. Where did you move to?" "Downtown." Meryl took a sip of her coffee. "It's a small apartment, but it's enough for me." "What about Elliot? Are you together?" Meryl smiled bitterly. "No. He disappeared from my life even faster than he appeared." That was the truth. After that evening, Elliot avoided her at the office, and when she finally caught him in an empty hallway and tried to talk to him, he looked embarrassed and awkward. "Listen, Meryl," he said then. "What we had, it was great, but I think we should stop." "After what happened?" "After my husband caught us in our house, you mean?" she asked bitterly. "Yes." Elliot looked anywhere but at her. "I hate to say this, but I'm not ready for a serious relationship, and certainly not one this complicated." "Complicated?" Meryl felt a wave of anger rising inside her. "What do you mean?" "Don't get me wrong," Elliot said, running his hand nervously through his hair. "I liked what we had. The secret meetings, the adrenaline, the risk. But now that it's all out in the open, it's not the same. So you were only attracted to the forbidden nature of our relationship." Meryl couldn't believe her ears. "The fact that I was married?" "Not only that, of course," Elliot hastily objected, "but yes, the element of secrecy definitely added spice. And besides, I don't want to be the reason someone's marriage falls apart. Your husband seemed like a really nice man." "You're a hypocrite," Meryl said quietly. "All this time you only cared about the thrill. You were no better than me." "Perhaps," Elliot agreed, "but at least I didn't swear to be faithful to anyone. I'm sorry, Meryl. I've handed in my resignation. It'll be better for everyone." Now, 3 months later, Meryl was surprised to find that she hardly thought about Elliot at all. His image had faded from her memory, leaving only a vague feeling of shame and disappointment. not so much in him as in herself. She had destroyed her marriage for a relationship that turned out to be an illusion, a mirage created by her own need for excitement. Everything had changed at work, too. No one said a word of condemnation to her face, but Meryl could feel the change in her colleagues' attitudes. Cold politeness, no invitations to company parties, quiet conversations that stopped when she appeared. She had become an outcast, even though on the surface everything looked the same responsibilities, the same position, the same performance indicators. One day, Meryl overheard two young female employees discussing her in the women's restroom. "They say she was having an affair with that handsome analyst who quit," said one, "and her husband caught them at their house." "No way!" exclaimed the other. "Poor guy. I saw him once when he came to pick her up. He was so nice, so simple, not her type at all." That's the point. She traded a reliable husband for a fleeting infatuation with a pretty young thing. Must be a midlife crisis. Meryl wanted to step out of the stall and set them straight, but what could she say? They were right. She had traded something real for an illusion, real intimacy for a fleeting passion. And now she was paying for it. What surprised Meryl most was how Noah was handling the situation. She knew from mutual friends that he had moved into a small apartment near work, started taking classes at a local college, and adopted a dog from a shelter. He didn't seem broken or bitter, more like liberated. One day, about 2 months after the divorce, Meryl ran into him at the supermarket. Noah was picking out fruit when she turned into the same aisle. Their eyes met, and for a moment Meryl thought she saw a shadow of his former tenderness in his eyes. "Hi," she said, not knowing how to act. "How are you?" "Not bad," Noah replied with a slight smile. "And you?" "I'm doing okay." An awkward pause hung between them. Meryl wanted to say so much. How sorry she was, how much she missed their old life, how she had finally begun to appreciate what she had and so thoughtlessly destroyed. But all those words seemed empty, inappropriate, selfish. "I heard you got a dog from a shelter," she said finally. "Yeah," Noah perked up noticeably. "Jake, mixed breed, part Labrador, part terrier. Great dog." "You always wanted a dog," Meryl remembered. "I kept putting it off, saying it was too much trouble." "Yeah," Noah nodded. "Turns out it's not that much trouble. I just had to make up my mind." Meryl sensed a deeper meaning in that simple phrase. Make up your mind. To change. To start a new life. To move on without the person who betrayed you. "Noah." She took a deep breath. "I wanted to say—" "No, don't," he interrupted gently. "Really, don't. What's done is done. We're both moving on." "But I have to apologize," Meryl insisted, "for everything I did, for the pain I caused." Noah looked at her with a long, thoughtful gaze. "I accept your apology, Meryl, and I don't hold a grudge against you." "Really?" She couldn't believe it. "After everything I did?" "Really," he nodded. "You know, it's strange, but our breakup, in a way, freed me. For many years I lived trying to be what you wanted me to be. Reliable, predictable, trouble-free. I stopped growing, stopped dreaming." "And now?" Meryl asked quietly. "Now I'm back in college, studying engineering. I always wanted to, but I kept putting it off. I got a dog. I started playing basketball again on the weekends. I'm living for myself, you know." Meryl felt tears welling up in her throat. "I'm happy for you, Noah. I really am." He smiled, that sincere, warm smile she had once loved so much. "Thank you. And I hope you find your way too, Mary. You deserve to be happy." With that, he said goodbye and left, leaving her standing at the fruit counter with tears ready to spill. That evening, Meryl thought a lot about her life, about what she had lost and what she had gained. She had lost a lot: a loving husband, a cozy home, the respect of her colleagues, her self-esteem. But what had she gained? Freedom? But freedom without a goal, without direction, was empty and meaningless. A week after meeting Noah, Meryl made a decision. She handed in her resignation and started looking for a job in another city. Lakeview was too small for two people with such a history, and she knew that Noah deserved to start a new life without constant reminders of the past. She was hired by an insurance company in Boston, a large company with many opportunities for growth. A new city, new people, new prospects. Meryl hoped that this would help her leave her mistakes behind and start over. On the last day before her departure, she wrote Noah a long letter. Not an email, but a real letter on paper. She didn't ask for forgiveness. He had already forgiven her. She didn't make excuses. There were none. She simply told him she was leaving, wished him happiness, and thanked him for all the years they had spent together and for the lesson he had taught her with his dignity and fortitude. "You are the best person I know," she wrote, "and you deserve better than I could ever give you." After sealing the envelope, Meryl held it in her hands for a while, wondering whether to send it. What if Noah didn't want to hear from her? What if her letter just reopened old wounds? In the end, she dropped the envelope in the mailbox. Not because she expected a reply or hoped for anything, but because it was part of her own healing process, acknowledging her mistakes, accepting their consequences, and moving on. On the day of her departure, Meryl handed over the keys to her apartment, loaded her few belongings into her car, and drove through the streets of Lakeview for the last time. She passed their former home with its white picket fence, now occupied by a young couple with a small child. She drove past the office where she had worked for 8 years, past the cafe where she and Noah had met 9 years ago. He was working on a broken coffee machine, and she was waiting for her latte, annoyed by the delay. As she left the city, Meryl felt a strange sense of relief. She didn't know what awaited her in Boston, whether she would finally find what she was looking for, authenticity, meaning true freedom. But she knew she had to try. This story didn't have a happy ending, at least not for her. But there was a lesson in it that Meryl was finally beginning to understand. Sometimes the strongest response to betrayal is not revenge, but a quiet move forward. That was what Noah had done, and now she was trying to follow his example, knowing that the road to redemption would be long and difficult. As she left Lakeview, Meryl saw a sign that read, "Come back soon," and smiled sadly. She wouldn't be coming back, at least not in the foreseeable future. It was the end of one chapter of her life and the beginning of another. And while she didn't deserve a happy ending after everything she had done, perhaps she deserved a chance to be better than she had been. Turning on the radio, Meryl headed east, toward the rising sun and a new day. The future was unknown, but for the first time in a long time, that unknown didn't scare her. After all, the worst had already happened. She had lost everything that mattered. Now, there was only one thing left to do: find the strength to move on, remembering the lesson Noah had taught her with his quiet dignity and ability to forgive.